You know that feeling, right? You're signing up for something new, maybe checking into a hotel, even just trying to get free parking, and bam, they ask for your NRIC number or, some other national ID. It happens so often, you almost don't think about it, just hand it over. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how is that data actually being handled? Are there rules? Well, today, that's exactly what we're diving into, the whole deal around collecting, using, and protecting Singapore's national registration identity card numbers, NRICs, and other national IDs, specifically in the private sector. We've got some key sources here, mostly the big advisory guidelines on the Personal Data Protection Act for NRIC and other national identification numbers from the PDPA. That started in 2018, but it's been updated, most recently late 2024. And this is the really fresh part, a brand new press release just out today, June 26, 2025, from the Ministry of Digital Development and Information. It's got this major advisory about stopping the use of NRIC numbers as passwords. So, yeah, we need to unpack this. It's really central to identity here, and there's some super important, very recent clarification on the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think, is watching how these sort of foundational data protection ideas have to evolve, to keep up with digital life. So we'll connect those established guidelines with these very latest directives. It's all about how organizations should handle what is, let's face it, one of our most sensitive bits of personal info, hopefully helping you, the listener, understand not just what the rules are, but really why they matter.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Maybe for someone new here or just as a quick refresher, what exactly is an NRIC?
Sure. So at its heart, the NRIC is a unique identifier. It's permanent. The Singapore government assigns one to every citizen and permanent resident. Think of it as like the cornerstone of your official identity in Singapore. It pops up everywhere, not just government stuff, but loads of everyday commercial things too.
Right. And it feels like there's a lot of concern wrapped around it. Why can't companies just collect it easily, like, I don't know, your email address? What makes the NRIC so special?
Well, it's very nature, really. An NRIC number is personal data, no question. You can be directly, permanently identified just from that number. It's not transient information. The guidelines themselves call it a permanent and irreplaceable identifier. And the worry is it can potentially unlock large amounts of information about you. That makes it incredibly sensitive. So if it's handled carelessly, without proper safeguards, the risk of it getting out and being misused for things like identity theft or fraud, it just skyrockets.
Okay, that really drives home the why. Does this sensitivity, this level of protection, apply just to the NRIC number itself? Or are other IDs covered too? And who exactly needs to follow these rules? Is it everyone?
Good questions. It's definitely broader than just the NRIC number. These guidelines cover collecting, using, disclosing the number itself, or copies of the NRIC, even just holding on to the physical card. And this applies to organizations, so private sector companies primarily. And yes, the same thinking extends to other key IDs, things like birth cert numbers, foreign identification numbers, FIN's work permit numbers, even passport numbers. The advice is basically don't collect these if you don't absolutely have to, or at least limit it to partial numbers because they serve a similar identifying purpose. But it's important to flag these rules do not apply to public agencies, government bodies, or organizations acting directly for them. They fall under a different set of regulations outside the PDPA's data protection provisions.
Right, so the general vibe is private companies, generally speaking, shouldn't be asking for your NRIC. But okay, let's say they do have a legitimate reason. One of the exceptions we'll get to. Once they have it, what are their responsibilities? How do they keep that super sensitive data safe?
Okay, so that's where the core PDPA principles kick in. Even if collection is allowed, organizations have strict duties. First up is consent, notification, and purpose limitation. Basically, they have to tell you why they need your NRIC, get your okay, and then only use it for that specific reason, unless, there's a legal exception.
And protecting the data itself once it's in their system.
Yeah, that's the protection obligation. They need reasonable security arrangements for all personal data, but for NRICs. Because they're so sensitive and the potential harm from misuse is so high, a greater level of security is explicitly required. We're not just talking locked filing cabinets here. It means looking at proper technological solutions. Things like scanning physical NRICs directly into secure, maybe encrypted software rather than just, making photocopies left, right, and center. And then there's retention limitation. This is key. They have to stop keeping your NRIC data or anything linking data back to you once the original reason for collecting it is over. And if there's no ongoing business need or legal requirement to keep it, the message is basically, don't hoard data just in case. Get rid of it when you're done. which naturally leads to the question, if they're generally not supposed to collect NRICs, when exactly is it okay? Why does the law build in these specific allowances?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question for most people, isn't it? When is it actually okay for someone to ask for my NRIC? The guidelines seem to point to two main situations.
Exactly. The first is pretty straightforward. If collecting, using, or disclosing the NRIC number is required by law, or if there's a specific exception listed in the PDPA itself. So, for example, if you go to Clinic XYZ for treatment, they can ask for your NRIC. It's needed for accurate patient ID and medical records, and that's backed by the private hospitals and medical clinics regulations. Or checking into Hotel ABC, they need your NRIC for their guest records, mandated by the hotel's licensing regulations. Another common one. Getting a new mobile phone line. Telco ABC needs your NRIC details. It's part of their license conditions under the Telecommunications Act.
Right, and it covers quite a few other areas too, doesn't it? Like massage places needing it for their client register, or private schools for student records, even starting a new job. Organization XYZ needs it for employment records under the Employment Act. But, and this is a neat point, the source makes it clear, it's not needed for job applications, only when you're actually hired.
That's a really crucial difference, yeah. And there are also those emergency exceptions. Like if someone's unconscious at Medical Center ABC, they can share NRIC data with the hospital without consent. That falls under the PDPA's fourth schedule for health emergencies. So basically, it's either spelled out in specific laws or it's truly essential to prevent serious harm or risk. It's not just for convenience.
Okay, so that covers the required by law part. What's the second main reason NRIC collection might be allowed?
The second situation is if it's genuinely necessary to accurately establish or verify someone's identity to a high degree of fidelity. Now, even here, they still need to notify you and get your consent. This usually comes up where getting the identity wrong could lead to a significant safety or security risk. Think about visitor entry to a preschool, maybe. Child safety is paramount there. Or where messing up identity could cause significant impact or harm, maybe financial harm or damage to reputation. This often applies in sensitive transactions. Healthcare, again, finance like for insurance, big financial aid, credit checks, or real estate deals.
And importantly, if they claim they need your full NRIC for this high-fidelity reason, they have to be ready to justify why.
Right.
They can't just shrug and say, it's our policy.
Precisely. They need a solid, documented reason tied to the actual risks involved in that specific situation.
Okay, but even when collection is allowed, under these exceptions, there's this really interesting, very recent development. It feels like it changes the game quite a bit, especially for online stuff, about how the number can be used. That seems critical for security now.
Absolutely. This brings us right up to the press release from today, June 26, 2025. The PDPC and the cybersecurity agency, the CSA, have jointly put out this advisory, and the message to the private sector is loud and clear. Stop using NRIC numbers for authentication.
Wow. Okay, that's a strong directive. Let's be super clear for everyone listening. What's the difference between identification and authentication here?
Right. Think of it like this. Your NRIC number is like your name, or maybe better, your fingerprint. It identifies who you are. So organizations might still use it for identification, maybe confirming it's you over the phone or linking it to your account in their system. That's identification. But authentication, that's like proving you are who you claim to be. That's the password, the secret handshake, the key to the door. And NRIC numbers should not be used for that proving part. They shouldn't be the key.
I can immediately see why using a static number, one that lots of places might know, as a password would be, well, a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Why is this seen as so unsafe now?
Oh, it's a massive vulnerability. The danger is if a company uses your NRIC number to let you log in or as a password to open, say, your insurance documents online, and someone else gets hold of your NRIC number, which isn't that hard, potentially they can just waltz in and pretend to be you. They could access your private data, maybe change things, maybe even make transactions. And unlike a password, you forgot.
I can't just reset your NRIC number.
Exactly. It's permanent. So the advisory is really pushing organizations hard if you're still using full NRICs or even partial ones for authentication, or maybe setting them as default passwords or combining them with easy to guess stuff like, the example 567A or 1JN80. You should transition away from this practice as soon as possible. It's a clear call to action.
Okay, so if NRICs are definitely out for authentication, what are the good alternatives? What should companies be using instead?
The advisory points to much stronger methods, things like, actual strong passwords, complex ones, or security tokens, maybe an app generating a code. or biometrics like fingerprint or facial recognition. Basically, anything that adds a layer of security beyond just that static, widely known NRIC number. Something dynamic or secret or unique to you physically. And if you step back and look at the bigger picture, this isn't just some minor technical tweak. It signals a pretty fundamental shift in thinking about digital identity and security. It's about shrinking the attack surface, making it harder for criminals. And really importantly, it puts the responsibility for security more on the organization's systems, not just relying on an individual's unchanging static ID number.
That really does shift the burden, doesn't it? It underlines that just because you could ask for it doesn't mean you should. Okay, so if full NRIC collection is generally frowned upon, what are the better alternatives? How can organizations identify people without grabbing the full NRIC?
Yeah, they're definitely encouraged to use other methods, things that work for their purpose but don't involve collecting excessive data. It could be anything, really. Maybe organization-specific IDs or user accounts people create themselves, tracking numbers for parcels, QR codes, even things like monetary deposits as a form of collateral instead of holding an ID card.
Right. And what about partial NRIC numbers? We do see those sometimes, maybe for loyalty schemes or things like that. How do they fit in?
That's a good point, and the guidelines are specific. Collecting a partial NRIC number up to the last 3 numerical digits and checksum. So like just the 567A from S1234567A, that is not considered the same as collecting the full NRIC. And that checksum, by the way, is just the final letter. It helps validate the number. However, and this is crucial, even a partial NRIC is still personal data if someone can be identified from it, maybe combined with other info they have. So organizations using partial NRICs still need to follow all the PDPA rules, especially around protecting that data. The risk is lower than the full number, sure, but it's not zero.
Okay, that's clear. Let's maybe run through a few common everyday examples where people might get asked for NRICs but shouldn't be, and what the better practice is. Like redeeming free parking at the mall. I definitely remember doing that years ago.
Oh yeah, that feels like ancient history now, right? And these guidelines explain why. Mall ABC definitely should not collect your full NRIC for parking. They could just look your NRIC to check you're eligible. Or maybe record your name, or a partial NRIC, or your cart plate number, maybe mobile number. Plenty of options. Same for buying movie tickets online. Cinema DEF doesn't need your NRIC. A booking reference number or an SMS confirmation code, that's perfectly fine for verification.
What about retail memberships or entering a lucky draw? Those seem common too.
Yeah, for a basic retail membership, Retail Store GHI can easily use your mobile number or email, maybe let you create a username. A partial NRIC could also work. No need for the full one. For lucky draws, they just need enough info to contact the winner and maybe verify them later. So full name, maybe partial NRIC, contact details. Again, not the full NRIC, just to enter.
And if you're just, say, registering interest in a new phone model or giving feedback on a purchase.
Retail Store JKL should really only need your name and contact details, phone or email, your NRIC. Completely unnecessary for that.
Makes total sense. What about somewhere like a private condo? Visitor management. Security is a real concern there.
Even there, condominium M&Os management, the MCST, shouldn't collect full NRICs and definitely shouldn't keep the physical cards. They can visually check an ID, sure, then maybe record the visitor's name, perhaps a partial NRIC, contact number, car number, if relevant. And they really should be using electronic visitor systems, password protected, not those old open logbooks. And critically remember, the retention limits delete the data when it's no longer needed. Same idea for like a secure data center issuing visitor passes. Don't hold on to the physical NRIC as collateral. Use other methods like having a single exit point where badges must be returned.
Or even something simple like renting a bike.
Right. Bicycle rental company ABC should not keep your physical NRIC. Much better options are taking a reasonable monetary deposit, maybe using GPS trackers on the bikes, or having a mobile app handle the rental and ID check.
There was also that subtle point in the guidelines, the difference between just having sight of an NRIC versus actually collecting the data. Can you break that down?
Yes, that's a key distinction. If, say, convenience store ABC just looks at your NRIC to check your age for buying cigarettes or alcohol, but they don't write down the number, don't photocopy it, don't enter it into any system, they just visually verify and hand it back, that's generally not considered data collection under the PDPA. They're just confirming something in the moment. No data is retained.
It really is striking how quickly this landscape changes, isn't it? Reflects how fast our digital lives are moving. So what did this all boil down to for you, the listener, trying to navigate this?
Well, remember the main guidelines, particularly from Part 2 of that advisory. They've technically been guiding interpretations since September 1, 2019. So organizations have had time to adapt. This new advisory today about authentication, it's not inventing a brand new rule from scratch. It's more like reinforcing and clarifying those ongoing efforts, making sure they align with current cybersecurity best practices.
So for you listening now, the takeaway seems clear. Your NRIC is sensitive stuff. Private companies generally shouldn't be asking for it unless it's legally required or absolutely vital for that high-fidelity ID check. And the big headline from today, they should never use it for authentication. Never is your password, basically.
Exactly. And knowing this stuff, it really empowers you. You understand your rights better. You can feel more confident asking, do you really need my full NRIC for this? When a request feels off. It's not just about guarding a number, it's about protecting your core identifier and understanding how you fit into this whole digital ecosystem.
In an age where our digital self is almost as real as our physical one, maybe the real value here isn't just protecting a number. It's about understanding this bigger shift in how we think about trust and proof and identity online. And it makes you wonder, as tech keeps racing ahead, what new ways of proving who we are might emerge? Ways that are secure, but also protect our privacy. And how much of the responsibility to adopt those new ways will land on each of us? Something to think about.